He named it the Mercitron.
Really?
Yes.
I didn't know there was a name for that one.
Yep, there is.
And I know he eventually recreates the Thanatron too, so.
Well, yeah, he was just having trouble getting his hands on the medications needed to operate Thanatron, which is why he made the Mercitron.
Gotcha. Why do they have to sound like Transformers?
They really do.
Healthcare horrors. Murder. Alrighty, let's do this. Welcome back to another episode of Healthcare Horrors, episode 25. Woohoo!
We made it.
We made it. We're doing the things. We got some exciting stuff to talk about today. Why are you laughing at me?
Because we're doing the things. What things are we doing? I always
recording a podcast about murder.
We are. My name's Alicia Carosella, and I'm your veteran training and development specialist. And today we have a very special guest with us. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Aaron Biddle, and I am the training manager here at MedStaff, and all things crime junkie.
All right. Sounds like you're very busy getting emails and stuff.
Oh, my apologies.
That's okay. All right. In case we use the video part for this podcast, explain the picture behind you.
He has to explain this.
So that is my daughter. She was 3 days old whenever we took that. And I have a knack for not being able to hang things straight. And once COVID happened and everything was virtual, I was already remote anyways, but in meetings I would always get made fun of because nothing was straight. So I just turned it all the way to the most extreme angle.
I imagine that people just make fun of you for it. So you just leave it there on purpose.
Yeah. I leave it there, and then every once in a while, the house cleaner comes down here and straightens it up.
Makes it straight.
Yeah.
Doesn't realize it's supposed to be crooked. It's super funny. Well, before he had that, it was just a bare white wall, and we joked that Biddle was in a prison.
The other walls are kind of decorated, but for this being a concrete wall, it just isn't. And so this is my prison. So it's
it is.
Top,
Whenever he's in any other room in a meeting, I'm always like, yep, his wife let him out of jail. She let him upstairs.
And I'm Ashley. I'm a brand specialist. Also today, I am doing some producing, and I am the one on the knobs because Dolan is out today, but he's here in spirit.
He is.
Mm-hmm. And last time in episode 24, we had Elise Woods remote in. She is located in Dallas, so she works in the Dallas office, and we chatted about Dr. Marcel Petiot. He was a French doctor, if you want to call him that, who during World War II claimed to help the resistance against Nazi Germany, but really instead of helping people flee the country, he was killing them, and that's just a very small part of what he was doing, so we don't want to give away too much.
No. So today we're going to talk about Jack Kevorkian, whose name is probably the only one I won't butcher. So he was born May 26, 1926, and I like to talk about the zodiac signs. So he's a Gemini, which means he's loving, emotional, kind, and caring, but unsatisfied and unable to find balance between emotion and reason. So I always like to circle back to that and see if any of that is true by the end of the story. So Jack was born in Pontiac, Michigan, and he was born to Murad Kevorkian, and then he's the second of three children born to Armenian immigrants. He was born Murad, so he wasn't born Jack. That's my bad. And then his parents are Levon and Satineg Kevorkian. Kevorkian's parents were refugees who escaped the Armenian massacres that occurred shortly after World War I. Levon was smuggled out of Turkey by missionaries in 1912 and made his way to Pontiac, Michigan, where he found work as an automobile foundry.
As you do in Michigan.
Yeah, right?
It all started, yep.
So Satineg fled the Armenian death march, finding refuge with relatives in Paris and eventually reuniting with her brother in Pontiac. So Levon and Satanig Kevorkian met through the Armenian community in their city in Pontiac, Michigan, where they were married and began their family. The couple welcomed a daughter as well. Her name's Margaret in 1926, and then their son Jack was born Murid, but his American friends and teachers call him Jack. And then they had a third child named Flora. So Levon eventually loses his job at the foundry in the early 1930s, and he began making a sizable living as the owner of his own excavating company, which it was really hard during that time because it was during the Great Depression in America. Other families suffered financially, but the Kevorkians began living a more comfortable life, and they moved to the suburbs of Pontiac.
Does that sound right to you, Biddle?
Spot on. Very spot on.
Sounds good.
And so Jack said that his parents sacrificed a great deal so that him and his siblings would be spared undue privation and misery, and that there was always enough to eat. So it seems like he had a pretty good childhood, which isn't usually the case. So
I do also have that they were just raised on the Christian belief very heavily, which he often challenged.
Yeah. So Levon and Satanig were strict and religious parents. They worked hard to ensure that their children were obedient Christians. Jack, though, had trouble reconciling what he believed were conflicting religious ideas, and his family regularly attended church, and Jack often pushed against the idea of miracles and an all-knowing God during his Sunday school classes. So he said if there were a God who could make his son walk on water, Kevorkian insisted that he would also be able to prevent the Turkish slaughter of his entire extended family. So then Jack also debated the idea of God's existence every week until he realized he would not find an acceptable explanation to his questions and stopped attending church entirely by the age of 12. So the children were encouraged to perform well. They all demonstrated high academic intelligence, but as the only boy, Jack became the focus of Levon and Satanig's high expectations. Jack occasionally rose to the occasion, but as a young boy, he was a voracious reader, an academic who loved the arts, including drawing, painting, and piano. But along with his great academic skills came a highly critical mind, and he rarely accepted ideas at face value. So he frequently engaged in arguments with his teachers at school, and sometimes humiliating them when they couldn't keep up with his sharp debate skills. So while he jabs at his teachers, it earned admiration from his classmates, but it often alienated him from his peers because he was learning came so effortlessly for him. So he was kind of making himself an outcast at that point, but he continues to do well. He's a bookworm, but he has trouble making friends as a result. So this leads to him giving up on the idea of romantic relationships, and he believes they're an unnecessary diversion from his studies. And he graduated at 17 years old with honors from Pontiac High School in 1945.
He's a smarty pants.
He is. But we all know those smart kids who are just too smart and then can't make friends.
You gotta watch out for them sometimes.
It's the quiet ones. So then he's accepted into the University of Michigan College of Engineering. He has his sights set on becoming a civil engineer, but halfway through his freshman year, he is bored with his studies and decides he wants to focus on botany and biology. So by the middle of the year, he starts medical school, and he often was taking 20 credit hours at a time, which is a lot. But he's doing this in order to meet the 90-hour medical school requirement. He graduated in medicine at the University of Michigan in 1952 and began a specialty in pathology soon after. However, in 1953, the Korean War abruptly forced Kevorkian's career to come to a stop as he served 15 months as an Army medical officer in Korea and then finished his service in Colorado.
Dang.
I will say we see a lot of people who were in the military that end up becoming murderers. I don't know if those things are related.
But it's a theme. It's something we notice.
It's something I didn't realize he was in the military as far as that goes.
Yeah. I didn't either.
While serving in his residency at the University of Michigan Hospital in the 1950s, Jack becomes fascinated by death and the act of dying. He made regular visits to terminally ill patients, photographing their eyes in an attempt to pinpoint the exact moment of death. Kevorkian believed that doctors could use the information to distinguish death from fainting, shock, or a coma in order to learn when resuscitation was useless. As quoted, "But really, my number one reason was because it was interesting. And my second reason was because it was a taboo subject." So Jack was not one to avoid any sort of distasteful ideas. And this again caused a stir with colleagues by proposing that death row inmates be used as the subjects of medical experiments while they were still alive. And his research was inspired by research that described medical experiments the ancient Greeks conducted on Egyptian criminals. Kevorkian formulated the idea that similar modern experiments could not only save value research dollars, but also provide a glimpse into the anatomy of the criminal mind. In 1958, he advocated his view in a paper presented to the American Association for the Advancement of Science. And this method was called terminal human experimentation. He argued that condemned convicts could provide a service to humanity before their execution by volunteering for painless, quote unquote, painless medical experiments that would begin while they were conscious but would end in fatality. For this unorthodox idea of his, peers gave him the nickname Dr. Death, which so many of these people are called Dr. Death. Mm-hmm. So Kevorkian's controversial views earned him minor media attention, which ultimately resulted in his ejection from the University of Michigan Medical Center. He continued his internship at Pontiac General Hospital instead, where he began another set of controversial experiments. And this is after he heard about a Russian medical team who was transfusing blood from corpses into living patients. And so Kevorkian enlisted the help of medical technologist Neil Nickel to simulate some of these experiments. The results were highly successful, and Kevorkian believed the procedure could help save lives on the battlefield if the blood from a blood bank was unavailable, that the doctors might use this research to transfuse the blood of a corpse into an injured soldier.
Like you said, he wasn't afraid to bring up these grim topics, which you're not going to know until you try. And he got the name Dr. Death, and he technically hasn't even killed anyone. He's just bringing up ideas.
Yep. So Kevorkian pitched this idea to the Pentagon, and he thought that it could be used in Vietnam, but he was denied a federal grant to continue his research. Instead, the research fueled his reputation as an outsider, scared his colleagues, and eventually, and I don't know what this has to do with anything, but Dr. Kevorkian is infected with hepatitis C. And I don't know if it's part of these experiments with the blood transfusions from the corpses. Maybe he's using it on himself because he doesn't have any money to do it on other people. So not really sure.
I didn't know. I'm learning all kinds of things that was written down that I didn't know. Like I didn't know the whole blood transfusion on the battlefield. I find a lot about Kevorkian very, very interesting, but that is one that I wondered, did we make a mistake by rejecting that completely? And it comes down to, if we're on a battlefield and I'm dead, right? Like there's no saving me, but I have the same blood type as a fellow soldier that's right next to me, and they might die, but they're alive. But my blood can keep them alive. Like absolutely use it. Like just use it.
Yeah, and I wonder why it's not, because it's definitely not used today. So I wonder if there's some other sort of medical implication that is stopping it from being practiced.
I mean, like people can donate their organs. Why not donate your blood?
Why I think it makes him so interesting, and we've touched on it, is that he wasn't afraid to go to that spot, right? To talk about those types of things. And it's the pressures of society that are like, no, that's weird, or that's unsafe or unsanitary, or this is life and death moments, and we're just shooting it down because that's kind of icky. We don't like that.
Yeah. Jinx. But I'm noticing the theme of him being unsatisfied, which is in line with what, his zodiac says about him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and a lot of what he brings up so far isn't just a matter of being black or white. There's a lot of gray area, a lot of room for experimenting and exploring these ideas instead of just shutting it down because it makes someone uncomfortable. Maybe he was ahead of his time.
Until.
Okay. Is that my cue to
that's
go?
your cue.
He kind of takes a very brief break from the medical field. He moves to Long Beach, California, to pursue art because he was very smart growing up, taught himself a whole bunch of instruments. He decided to take painting classes and was really into painting. Of course, as you can imagine, a lot of the imagery that inspired him was probably kind of dark. Let's see. So yeah, it was 1976. So what brings him back to healthcare? He's 56 years old, and in 1984, there's a increase in prison executions. So Kevorkian couldn't help but reinstate his old ideas of using prisoners for medical experiments, and now has the idea that why can't we harvest their organs for transplants? Again, like he's just into recycling, and not wasting things, I feel like. Finally, the California legislator thought he was onto something. In 1987, he notices a shift in healthcare and physician-assisted death, which was being favored in other countries. So he decides to move to the Netherlands, where doctors figured out some loopholes to make this practice legal. So he's not in the Netherlands. Do you have anything about the Netherlands? Because I just had that little brief thing.
No, but actually I have a little bit of information about him leaving the medical field before he comes back. So when he is in Long Beach, he ends up having another dispute with a chief pathologist, and he claims his career is doomed by physicians who fear his radical ideas. So then he retires to devote his time to a film project about Handel's Messiah, which was research for a reinvigorated death row campaign. And so in 1970, he still didn't have a job. He had a fiance, but she broke up with him, or he broke up with her after finding she didn't have enough self-discipline, I guess. And then by 1982, he was living alone and living out of his car. Jeez. Off of Social Security. So then he comes back into the medical field.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
So I just have that he did move to the Netherlands, but nothing more specific than that.
Yeah, he was in the Netherlands for a very brief amount of time. In 1988, he moves back to Michigan after conducting his own research in the Netherlands so that he could successfully open a new practice on bioethics and obiatry, which is the study of death. And I think he coined those terms himself. So he's 60 years old. He's providing death counseling for elderly patients in his apartment. Some of his patients confide in him that they are just basically ready to die because they're terminally ill. Their quality of life just isn't there anymore. And this is still illegal in the U.S., and it must have been harder to find the loopholes, unlike in the Netherlands. So let's see, David Ritalin, who's 38 years old, has a procedure done to an aneurysm on his spine that leaves him basically paralyzed to the point where he can't even breathe on his own. So he's just left bedridden and has to always be tended to. Physicians refused David's requests to die, so he submits a legal appeal in May of 1989 for physicians to take him off the ventilator and just let him slip away. So submitting an appeal, that's going to take months to get back, and he's miserable. So he also places an ad in the paper seeking a doctor to carry out what he wants. So Kevorkian, of course, sees the ad in the paper and responds,
Hey, I know a guy.
yeah, I might be able to help you out. But of course, Kevorkian is still concerned with legal repercussions, of course. However, there wasn't a law against assisted suicide. So there's his little loophole. So this sets in motion Kevorkian's design for the death machine that patients could use to carry out the task themselves.
Do you have its name?
Go ahead and talk about its name. I didn't take too many notes on the name, but...
He calls it Thanatron, which is Greek for instrument of death.
Yes.
Thanatron.
Of course, it has to sound like...
a robot?
Yeah. In 1989 of July, courts do eventually approve David's appeal to be taken off life support, which is carried out a few days later. So Kevorkian does not get to try his machine on David. The appeal was approved because, let's see, basically patients do have the right to refuse healthcare, and that's kind of what they said. David was refusing healthcare and wanted to die. So Kevorkian didn't get to use his machine. He's still working on it. So how it works, do you know how it works, Biddle? Do you know much about the Thanatron?
Thanatron, it's the 3 medications, like the morphine, like it's all hooked up to essentially drips that the patient presses. It's an IV into their arm, and it just like a lethal injection essentially. It's a painkiller that puts you to sleep. And then I think is it potassium that ends up stopping the heart, essentially.
Potassium chloride, yeah.
Causes the heart attack. Essentially, he was effectively inducing a heart attack in these patients while they were asleep. Yeah.
Nailed it. You do know your stuff.
He does.
I realized, though, as you guys were talking, I did miss some things. So, like, I was wrong on some stuff. Like, I didn't know he had Hep C. I was pretty sure that he was Jewish, not like essentially anti-religion. So I'm learning as well.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, yeah, and he was just questioning religion in general, and yeah. But so yeah, that's how his death machine worked. He wanted to just help people pass peacefully and not be in pain anymore. So he takes the invention to the press, hoping for a media frenzy, basically, because, you know, even if it's bad publicity, it's still free publicity. And of course, he's hoping maybe his first patient will seek him out. There are regulations and rules for his product. So he wants specifically a patient that is terminally ill, and that this is like their last resort. This is their last option, and that they, of course, really do want to pass on. In the Netherlands, physician-assisted death included consultations with at least one other doctor, but Dr. Kevorkian would just meet with the patient one-on-one, or usually there would be like another loved one in the room, and he would get this on video that they, you know, they're making this decision for themselves, and he would have a lot of paperwork and do everything to kind of cover his butt. So Janet Atkins, she's 54 years old. This is in 1989. She does find Dr. Kevorkian, she finds his services fitting, and reaches out to him that she's ready to die. Dr. Kevorkian, 61 years old now, has a consultation with Janet, who is suffering a severe diagnosis of Alzheimer's. And it's kind of sad. I mean, she just doesn't want her family to see her continue to deteriorate, and she wants them to remember her for how she is now. And her husband, Ron, is, you know, I can't even imagine what this would be like, but he's very supportive of her decision. and her choice to try, well, she does eventually try an experimental drug, but that doesn't help. So she goes to Kevorkian. So this is like her last hope. Dr. Kevorkian obliges, and they set a date in June. But finding a location to do this is like kind of one of the hardest things because there's, of course, a lot of liability. Like a lot of doctors' offices don't want him to do this in there. A friend eventually opens up their house to him and then is like, yeah, I don't want to be like sued. So
Why couldn't they do it at her house?
I don't know. Maybe they didn't
Instead
live in
of-
Michigan. I think they had to come to Michigan.
I think they did live in Michigan because they met at she was part of the Hemlock Society, which is an organization that advocates voluntary euthanasia for terminally ill patients in Michigan.
I don't know.
So, but where they, I just like am kind of annoyed at how this goes down. But
Yeah.
okay.
So Saturday, June 2nd, 1990, Dr. Kevorkian meets Janet and her husband, and they set up an interview, again, that he records for legal reasons, just talking about all of the details, what's going to happen. Monday, June 4th, 1990, Janet meets Dr. Kevorkian at a park, and the death machine, his Thanatron, is in the back of his 1968 Volkswagen van.
Yeah.
So while we're talking about like military being kind of a theme, it seems like Volkswagens are kind of a theme.
For killers,
Yeah.
always.
Because Ted Bundy had his Volkswagen Bug, and then
We talked about somebody else who had one too. I think last time.
someone, it wasn't Donald Harvey. It was before that, that they had a Volkswagen Rabbit.
Mm-hmm.
No, I have to look it up. I have to look up his
It's
name
gonna bug
now.
you.
It's going to bug me.
Like military people, really people with bad childhoods, and Volkswagen drivers.
Seriously.
Avoid them all. Like if you're a military person with a Volkswagen, I don't want to talk to you.
I know. Red flags. Red flags.
Oh gosh, it was Teet Harem.
Teet Harem.
He had a Volkswagen Rabbit. So yeah, he has the machine in the back of his van because they couldn't find a location. So here they are in the middle of a park. Nervous, of course, Dr. Kevorkian's getting things set up. He eventually gets Janet hooked up to the machine with an IV and a heart monitoring machine. After reassuring this is what she wants for the last time, Janet says yes, and she's given the button and she presses it. Once Janet flatlines, Dr. Kevorkian immediately gets a hold of authorities to report the death. So, yeah.
How do you explain that though?
Yeah. I mean,
I get it, but
yeah, he's not trying to hide anything. So, June 8th, 1990, Dr. Kevorkian's machine, of course, gets confiscated while there's an investigation being taken place. In December 1990, prosecutors file murder charges, even though Ron, Janet's husband, does back up Dr. Kevorkian, saying this is what she wanted, and he was very supportive of it. The charges do eventually get dropped. Do you have anything like specific on the trial?
I just know that the charges were dropped because of due to Michigan's indecisive stance on assisted suicide.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't really have any precedent to actually like make charges stick.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Like, imagine if you're the prosecutor there, like how do you decide to bring charges there? Like the husband of the person, like the one who did it, like is open about it, says this is what happened, here's the machine, you have all of that. So you have all of the truthful information and video recordings of her wanting it, like it's just a test.
And ultimately, he just gave her the tool. She did it.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah. So the tool, though, the courts want Kevorkian to not use the machine anymore, and they keep it.
So the van thing, Janet was from Oregon.
oh, she was?
She was from Oregon, which is weird because, like, it seems like Oregon, as his, I don't know if we'll get into it, but like as his career progressed, like that became a front-running state as far as the assisted suicide stuff goes.
I was going to say.
Mm-hmm. So all this going on, it kind of makes everyone question a doctor's responsibility to their patients. Was it unorthodox, or was it just a sense of humanity? So spring 1991, Dr. Kevorkian decided to keep seeing patients kind of under the radar. But since the court confiscated his machine, he needed to come up with a new plan. His new approach was going to give the patient a mild sedative, and through a mask on their face, they would inhale carbon monoxide, which they would release via a button as well.
He named it the Mercitron.
Really?
Yes.
I didn't know there was a name for that one.
Yep, there is.
And I know he eventually recreates the Thanatron too, so.
Well, yeah, he was just having trouble getting his hands on the medications needed to operate Thanatron, which is why he made the Mercitron.
Gotcha. Why do they have to sound like Transformers?
They really do.
So yes.
They're transforming life to death.
Okay. Gotcha. So overall, the objective is to still provide an end to the patient's pain without causing more pain. So we will get into Sherry Miller, who has multiple sclerosis.
Multiple sclerosis.
She's in her mid-40s. This is obviously a disease of the brain and the spinal cord. There's no cure for it. She has restricted movement. She also testifies on behalf of Dr. Kevorkian while he's in court for Janet, because Cheryl also would like his assistance. Also, there's Marjorie Wantz. She's 58 years old. She experiences pelvic pain from pelvic surgery where they were removing tumors. Her illness is not terminal, though. But both of these ladies, they don't know each other. They reach out to him. So October 22nd, 1991, he meets up with Sherry and Marjorie in the same day for a consultation. And they, of course, each bring their respected loved ones who support their decision to die. October 23rd, the ladies, they meet up with Dr. Kevorkian at a cabin. So still trying to find somewhere to do this is tough. And he has the Thanatron, which Marjorie gets hooked up to, of course, after doing all the legal stuff, making sure that this is what they want. And he's covering his butt. By 5:05 p.m., Marjorie administers the chemicals into her system and passes away. She uses the Thanatron with the potassium chloride. Sherry, however, she doesn't have veins strong enough to support an IV, so she uses his new technique, the Mercitron.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And this also works. She administers the carbon monoxide into her system. And right away, as soon as both of these ladies pass away, Dr. Kevorkian notifies authorities. 1 month later, Michigan's Board of Medicine revokes Dr. Kevorkian's medical license, which was a bigger slap in the face than legal action, it seems like. But, I mean, they couldn't get him on anything for the assisted suicide, so they just revoke his license.
Yes, because he was prosecuted a total of 4 times, and his attorney successfully argued that he can't be found criminally guilty of assisting suicide if he administered the medication with the intent to relieve pain and suffering, even if it increased the risk of death.
His license is revoked, and he wants to continue his practice, so that kind of opens the door for more prosecution possibilities.
Mm-hmm.
December 1992 is when that happened. Oh, okay. It's December 1992 where it is officially against the law for physicians to assist in suicide. So they do make it a law. In August 1993, he does still assist another death. And his defense team said it was in his right. Like, this is where it kind of gets fuzzy to me. I don't know how he's still practicing and how he's even getting the supplies and the medicine if he has his license revoked. I'm not really sure how that works.
Don't know.
Yeah.
When did his license get revoked?
In 1992, 91 or 92. And then, so I don't know. I honestly don't even know if he ever gets his license back through all of this. I at least don't have notes on that.
I don't either, but I know that this doesn't come to a head for still quite a few years.
Right.
Oh, and of course he decides to serve as his own legal counsel at one point.
Oh, man.
That's a theme too.
Jeez.
So did they revoke it in anyone, or did they like just suspend it?
I have revoked, but maybe they just suspended it. I don't know. The Michigan Board of Medicine revokes his license.
Yeah, because like if these are like, you can't just go buy potassium chloride,
right?
I mean,
maybe he
like morphine to like put somebody underneath. Like you just
fake documents. Maybe he just had fake documents because I'm sure there was no sort of like online place for you to check at that point in 1991.
Yeah.
You know, who can buy these things and who can't.
Unless he really stocked up on this stuff and somehow that didn't get flagged, you know? I don't know. There's near 130 people that he assists with suicide, and he's 70 years old at this point. So yeah, he just kind of, I don't know, just really amps up. He at this point wants to be even more innovative and keep evolving though, which leads him to human euthanasia. So instead of having the patient do it themselves, he could do it. So this would mean less human and patient error, but opens up even more legal concerns. So Thomas Yuck, he is 52 years old, suffers Lou Gehrig's disease. So his muscle function is deteriorating, quality of life is going downhill. In 1998, Thomas Yuck agrees to Dr. Kevorkian's new euthanasia method and just says that he's ready to die. And September 17th, 1998, he actually films this procedure. So it's a painless and peaceful process, still completely illegal. But he films it, and then in November, he actually gives the recording to the TV show 60 Seconds, which it's aired. And of course, the public is like outraged and things go crazy. But Thomas Yuck actually agreed that this footage could be released too. So looks like you were going to say something.
I always just laugh at these people.
Can you just imagine going to like 60 Minutes and saying, I have a video of me like killing somebody, let's air it? And they aired it. They're like asking him questions like, so is he dead yet? He's like, no. Like, what about now? Yes, he is deceased now. And like, just we're airing that on TV and like, the bear of any government entity, like you gotta know charges are coming at that point.
Right. I mean, he's trying to make this as mainstream as you can. So this, of course, pushes the court to take action on charging him with first-degree murder, even though at this point, even the healthcare industry is kind of torn. Like, maybe they're starting to see that he's kind of on to something. So in March 1999, the jury finds Dr. Kevorkian guilty with not first-degree murder, but second-degree murder. Which gets him 10 to 15 years in prison or 6 years before he could have the possibility of parole. So even Thomas Yuck's, did you have something?
No, I was just thinking this is the time he represented himself.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yep. I feel like you usually go to jail when you represent yourself because you're not an attorney.
No one else wants to back you up. But even Thomas Yuck's brother tries to back up Dr. Kevorkian in court. In 2007, Dr. Kevorkian is 79 years old, and he does get released from prison. He finally does stop actively taking patients, but still liked to do interviews and talk about his belief in this process. Eventually, he gets diagnosed with cancer of the liver.
It's from his hepatitis.
Oh, is it?
Mm-hmm.
See, yeah, I didn't even know that he got that.
It's from his hep C.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, ma'am.
So he's 83 years old when he gets hospitalized for issues with his heart and kidneys. And then June 3rd, 2011, he does pass away from a blood clot. Nowadays, there are 11 states where the practice of assisting a patient with death is legal. So it's just kind of crazy how that all pans out. So was he wrong, or did he just open the door that no one else wanted to open? It's not just black and white. Was it humane? Was it not? Was he just ahead of his time?
You know, there's a whole movie about him on HBO.
Probably. I wouldn't be surprised.
It's called You Don't Know Jack. And it stars Al Pacino.
Really?
As Jack Kevorkian, and it also has Susan Sarandon and John Goodman.
I'm going to have to watch that.
Yep.
I'm going to have to watch that.
All right, Biddle. So back to your question that you asked me the other day. Do I think that he killed all these people?
No. Do I think you're a murderer? Like, I don't think like that he's a murderer. Like, you can't deny that he played a part in killing these people. But it goes to the question of why this is so intriguing from a layperson standpoint. And even, I'm sure, like, healthcare providers and physicians of, like, where's the choice, right? What is, like, in your mind, do you think that he's like with some serial killer or murderer?
What do you think?
I don't think he's a murderer. I think he had the best of intentions. And I think, what is it when you become a doctor? Like, do no harm. Like, you're just not. Yeah. So, like, I don't think he was harming anybody based on the information. So that's, I mean, and I get why people think it's controversial, but he's definitely not a typical person that we discuss on this podcast.
Yeah, like, I feel like if he was a sicko and was doing this for alternative,
like pleasure.
Yeah, if this was more of a pleasure thing to him, like, he wouldn't have made it so peaceful.
Yeah, for sure.
And I mean, this might get kind of dark, but if someone is ready to end their life because they are terminally ill, of course, I could see why they would want to seek out a doctor and maybe go leave this world in a way that's maybe more socially acceptable and in the hands of a healthcare professional versus the alternative ways to taking your own life, you know?
I agree.
I could totally see why they would want to do that. So I don't think he's a bad guy. I mean, it's legal in 11 states now. I don't know what the states are, but
I know Oregon is one of them because they were the first, and they like had parameters around, like, you had to live there for like 6 months, and there are a whole bunch of checks and balances, counseling and all that you would have to go through. I don't think that he was necessarily wrong, especially, I think he did a lot of things that CYA'd, if you will, like cover your buttocks, just by like recording the videos. And it is very hard if you're going to be brought, like, charges are going to be brought up against you, to have them on video struggling to breathe, struggling to move, struggling. And I think you put yourself in that person's seat. And if, heaven forbid, that ever happened to you and you were just out of options, like, I guess I am going to equate this a little bit to, if you have a pet that's suffering.
100%.
This is what, like, this is the thing that I want to give them to end that suffering. Like, why is it okay for a pet but not for ourselves or our loved ones? I think my personal opinion is euthanasia, assisted suicide, if you're a clear mind and that's the route that you want to go, like, it should. No qualms.
Yeah. And I agree with like the whole pet thing too, because, you know, if you can still come up on criminal charges for like animal abuse, just like you can if you're like abusing or harming a person. So why is it different? You know, like why do the laws apply differently? But the states that physician assisted suicide is legal is Colorado, the District of Columbia, Hawaii, Maine, New Jersey, New Mexico, Oregon, Vermont, and Washington.
All right. Gotcha. Yeah, and like with Janet, she had Alzheimer's, and she really didn't want to take the experimental drug that doctors were suggesting she takes. You know, she was just ready to end it. But Kevorkian even said, like, look, you should try this first. And then even doctors didn't see an improvement in her state. So, but yeah, he wasn't just like jumping all over the opportunity to kill someone or help someone kill themselves. There was one of the ladies, Marjorie, I think, she was in a lot of pain. She technically wasn't terminally ill. So that was kind of a thing. Like, is the pain all in her head, or, you know, she could be technically seeking treatment somehow, but I don't know. There's a lot of fuzzy areas.
There is. And even with somebody like that, you could say they're in a lot of pain, but are they in more sound mind than somebody with Lou Gehrig's disease or something like that? Especially the Alzheimer's, right? Like you snap out of it and you don't know like what state of mind that you're in, but that's okay to say like, yeah, I want to die, but I'm in so much pain I don't. Like what's stopping that lady from, other than support and courage of, you know, doing it in a more heinous way that happens all the time. I think it's difficult. You guys, somebody had mentioned something or said something about like, he's not like a lot of the other people that we talk about that are kind of, he's the good guy of serial killers, if you will, or anything like that. But like, I don't know that maybe he didn't get his, you know, his own little joys out of it, because it's such a weird topic. Does the fact that this is taboo and that's what he likes to explore in the road that he goes down, like, does he find joy in that? And at what point is the threshold of that's okay versus this is wrong?
And he really pushed it. Like, he didn't care about going to jail. Like, and then as soon as he got out of jail, I mean, he just continued to push it.
Yeah, that was
like, he was obsessed with it.
And then he got onto like the Ninth Amendment really hard about like, right, just because they're not stated in the Constitution, it's not end all be all. Like the rights are assumed essentially, and trying to go that level. And
I don't think I'm against it.
No, and I wouldn't say I'm either. Like, there is like a whole system of checks that they have to go through, and it's not a decision that's able to be made impulsively. No. So, I mean, I don't know. I'm always kind of like, it's your own body, so you get to just do whatever you want with it, in my opinion. And if you can do it in a humane way, if you're suffering, then do what you got to do.
Absolutely. I absolutely agree. I think it's more along the lines of, you could even take this to a weird, like, freedoms and rights direction of, like, you claim that you're a free person, but yet the government says you can't make your own choices. Like, nothing's stopping somebody from taking a gun out into a field and
exactly.
And I think it also becomes very scary with the unknown. So we want to be overly cautious with it. But I do agree that, you know, there are times that this should be utilized.
Well, what we like to do is end on a positive note.
Yes, something positive.
So what is something positive that's happening in your day or your week, Aaron?
In my day or my week. So we have a new compliance class that has started. So that is going really well. The compliance trainers are doing a very, very good job with those nine folks. And then, you know, I'm really excited. We are hiring the biggest class that we've ever had. I'm going to have Alicia really going to work here next week.
I know.
So with the biggest class, so I'm really looking forward to seeing what that looks like.
Yeah. What about in your personal life? What else is going on besides work stuff that's good?
Man, you know, that, like, I've got a 3-year-old, like we talked about the photo, and she's behind us. She is just absolutely we're having a string of just really fun events with her, and that's, you know, always super exciting. The way she like lights up about the littlest things, and I just absolutely love it. So
I know. It's always fun to watch them discover. Forrest rode a horse on Sunday all by himself. Like he got up there and he held on. Like obviously the girl like had the rope and like walked him around, but I mean he was full on riding a horse by himself.
And how did that go? Did he
It went so well. I was completely shocked that he got on this horse. I just told him it was going to be really fun and really exciting. And he's like, yeah, okay. And then I put him on top of the horse and let him go.
Has he ever done like pony rides where it's like around the barn or anything like that?
Nope.
No?
I put him on a full-on horse. And I said, hold on.
And it was just last week he like fell down the stairs for not holding onto the railing. But
I know.
He climbed on a horse.
I know,
Yeah.
100%. I know. You never know, but like it was really exciting to watch him do that because he's like in that weird stage where he's either really excited about something or he's just like not going to do it at all. So,
Yes. Yep. Well, I don't have kids, but I have dogs and they are absolutely nuts and they definitely make me happy. They drive me crazy sometimes, but you know, going home and being attacked by them makes me very happy. So, yeah. I'm going to stick with my fur babies.
Was kids and pets.
yes, always.
Next time, we don't know who we're talking about next time. We didn't look it up.
We didn't.
So,
We did not make a decision.
We were so
It'll
excited.
be a surprise for everybody,
It'll be a
including us.
surprise.
Great.
We were so excited to have a guest today. So thank you for joining us, Aaron.
Thank you for having me. It's been wonderful. We will talk to you guys soon.
For sure.
Yes, definitely.
All right.
Have a good one. Good luck with everything and all the new classes.
Bye.
Will do. Bye.
Murder.
Thank you for listening to Healthcare Horrors, brought to you by Atlas MedStaff. Just a reminder, we are not healthcare professionals. We are just fans of true crime, talking about some of history's darkest moments in healthcare. Stay tuned, stay healthy, and stay safe. Healthcare Horrors.
Murder.